the best part.
Action! Well, welcome to the Stoned Roadie podcast. This is one you ain't gonna wanna miss. It stars Craig Reed, the Stoned Roadie, and Griff the Rocket Scientist. And don't forget Kathy Godzi and all the good friends that come along. Today we got the waning interest who just happened to stop on by. And I hope I can do this podcast because I'm pretty damn high. So why don't you take it away there, Griff Martin?
Yeah, okay. Well, here we are on the Stoned Roadie Show. We have a special guest, Wayne Roberts, with the Waning Interest podcast, The Whip. And so he's on here, and we're doing a Swapcast, which I guess Wayne coined that phrase.
Doug Stanhope coined it.
Okay, yeah. So we're doing a simultaneous podcast. We're doing one for Wayne and one for the Stoned Roadie Show, and so we're just gonna get on here and talk about a bunch of bullshit. And if anybody's has never seen Wayne's podcast, you ought to go check it out. And if you haven't ever seen ours, you need to check ours out. So we're gonna steal subscribers. How's that sound, Wayne?
I think I'll be stealing more than you'll be stealing from me.
Well, yeah, we have a nemesis. We got a guy who he makes fun of us because we don't have enough subscriptions compared to him, and he's on a fan book page, and so we'll talk a little bit about that guy later, Jimmy Slicker, whatever his name is. And so anyway, so we got waning interest on here, Wayne Roberts, and we're gonna probably start off and let Wayne kind of control it to begin with. You got any questions for Craig, Wayne?
Oh, I got a few, but first I want to start with welcome to the Waning Interest podcast, Swapcast with the Stoned Roadie Show, the Stoned Roadie and the Whip. Sounds like a fucking movie title. Somebody write it. August 22nd, my senior prom date, Sarah's birthday, 2023. The babbling dabbler, the smallest click on the internet, the pinball brain in your favorite machine. It's like a diary or book, but not as stale or coherent. From a more mentally challenged Forrest Gump, or if Mikey and Mouth from the Goonies played a lot of bareback leapfrog years ago, and then 3 months later, here I am. Hi, guys. How was that for my open? I was trying to do what Craig did in my version without my open. But I think we killed it.
Yeah, well, what brought us here is we were trying to get on his server, or his podcast, what he uses, and what's the name of that podcast? StreamYard, and it was working great until Craig got on there and screwed it up. Nobody could hear. Craig couldn't hear us. We could hear him, and then and then so we said, well, we'll jump over on the Zoom, and so here we are. And of course, we don't get the little bells and whistles that Wayne has. We don't have any of those bells and whistles, Wayne. We don't. You have all those songs and things that you were going to play. We don't have any of that. We're technophobes, and you're probably
no, dude. You do all the editing. You put a lot of cool stuff in after and before. I just don't do that. I have it all ready to go, and it just so it just goes up. I don't have to mess with it unless I have to, unless I listen back for quality and go, I shouldn't have said that name.
Oh yeah,
which happens very rarely because I get the names wrong all the time, so it doesn't matter.
Yeah, so here we are, and then well, something pretty cool. Let's talk about that belt back there with Jim Morrison. Craig, what's the story? Yeah, that
looks like I'm trying to I'm playing with Jim's pecker. Sorry,
because it looks kind of like Ronnie Van Zant's belt, the one that Donnie Van Zant ended up with, I believe. Craig, you got a story about that, don't you?
Well, when I started with the band, I had a belt that was similar to that. It wasn't the real nice silver conchas. It was just silver discs. And I wore it one time, and Ronnie was pretty fond of it, so I just gave it to him. I figured that was a pretty good move employment-wise. Give the boss a present, It worked out pretty well,
So what ended up happening to that belt?
I don't know. Like I said, it wasn't a real good. Didn't have the silver conches like that. It was just like silver discs. They were, but it was pretty cool. Looked cool
I've
on
seen him
stage.
wearing it in a few live shows and some
It
pictures,
was
so you
in
can
the
see it.
very, 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 very beginning in '74. But yeah, he got a better one out, later down the road.
But now my question though is, but it's nobody seems to point. Maybe people have pointed it out before, but I did a podcast. I think it was 114, not 114, 113 maybe, where I did this whole thing. I did a couple where this Guns N' Roses Skynyrd synchronicities, which a lot of people say Guns N' Roses is like they were supposed to be our Stones, but I see them more as Skynyrd with so many similarities. They both had a Hell House, so many things. And then they've got the album "Give Me Back My Bullets." On that fucking album, on the cover, it looks like Gary's wearing the hat that Slash made famous. It's just that it's not a top hat. It's more like the hat that Ronnie wore towards the end.
You
If
got
you
a
look at,
picture of that, don't you, Griff? There somewhere.
can you pull up? Can you pull
Yeah.
up
I
the
mean,
cover? I
you
would
probably
have.
won't be able to see
Oh,
it.
okay. I thought you had the. Oh, okay, you had it on your phone.
Yeah,
Never
it
mind.
it looks like a Slash hat. It's a little bit not as tall, but it's got
Right. It's more
that
like the Ronnie hat that he had.
yeah. Yeah, and
But the thing around it, it looks like the same belt, which is nobody's pointed that out before. And to me, when people talk about Slash, they don't mention Gary as much as they should, because there's so many Gary similarities, man. It's so many, it's insane. But
he
nobody
may
fucking
have
mentions that. They all say, oh, Slash is like Joe Barry, or they'll name somebody else, but I see him so much more like Gary, like Rosington. And oh, by the way, if you see I'm wearing the Rosington, I got the sideburns and the goatee and the long hair.
yeah, I don't know if you can see that hat on Gary
But
right there.
you can see it when you look at it. Yeah, there's a little glare, but you look at that. Does that not look like the Slash hat, but Ronnie's version?
Yeah, I think Slash may have ripped that whole thing off from Leon, because
Well, there's a Leon hat too, but Slash said the story with Slash says he saw it. He grabbed the hat and he saw the belt somewhere, and he just threw the belt on the hat in a last minute thing while he was kind of fucked up on the way to a show or something, if I remember from his book. But so I don't, yeah, I'd say borrowed, but I don't know if he was even know what he was doing with that. I don't think he even knew maybe, I don't know, but I think that's his story. And don't hold me to it. I've read the book 3 fucking times.
And that belt that Ronnie had that looks like the one that Jim Morrison has on right there. Gene Odom tells a story about Dickie Betts drunk in a bar, and he has that belt and he's swinging it around his head, yelling to everybody, Leonard Skynyrd sucks. And they called Gene up in his room and said, you better get down here. Ronnie's getting ready to beat somebody's ass and it ain't going to be fun. And so Gene went down there and he beat up Dickie Betts. And
get it out.
Yeah, he beat him up. And then Dickie Betts had a couple goons from the bar beat him up out in the alley, and he thought Gene did it. And so he kind of put a hit out on Gene. And then Gene went to his trailer later on and said, hey man, that wasn't me that beat you up. That was somebody else. And so they made up. But yeah, I don't know which podcast that was. It was one where Gene Odom was on the Stoned Roadie podcast. So interesting.
Oh, that's that. Well, speaking of Gene, that's a question that I've had. I don't know if I'm allowed to ask it, but that's one of the things that I met 1997. I was one of the producers. Do you guys know the show Bennington on Sirius XM?
No.
Ron Bennington, the comedian.
Sounds familiar, yeah.
Well, it used to be, it was Ron and Fez, but before that it was Ron and Ron in Florida. And
that's right. Ron and Ron. I've heard of
Ron and Ron show, yeah.
Right.
Well, in 97, when I was Batman, one of their producers, Ronnie named me Batman. Everybody had a nickname, obviously, in 97, and we had Artemis in, and Artemis told the fucking story about what I've always wanted. He told the story about getting shot, which of course turns out to be not true. I believed it for many years and repeated it, which pisses me off. Nothing, and I'm not saying anything bad about him. I'm just saying that's what happened. And one of the things that bugs me is every time he tells the story, he leaves out Ken Peden and Mark Frank. Weren't those two with him?
Yeah.
And even in the movie, I
Yeah.
watched the scene where he gets out and goes off and he's by himself. Why does he fucking do that? Even though he tells,
maybe it's because if he and mentioned their name, he'd have to pay him or something. You never know, you know. I mean,
but every story, even
that,
the story, even when he was on the Ron and Ron show, he told the same story about he was alone. This is 97. He's been saying that story. I've never seen him. I've seen a bunch of interviews, and I've never seen him in an interview where he mentions their fucking names or that he was with other people. It's always that he was by himself. What the fuck, man? That really bugs me.
Yeah, well, there's no telling, man.
Kenny Peden did say that Artemis was like the leader.
Well, I'm sure he was. He was military, but still, even in the movie, he's all by himself.
Well, Kenny was hurt, and Kenny said, "I can't cross that creek by myself." And Artemis jumped in the creek, and he said it was only waist deep or whatever, how deep. But he said, "Yeah, we can get across there. It's not deep." So they waded across. But yeah, he does do that. But he was kind of like the leader. The Mark,
that I believe,
and Kenny Peden were pretty hurt, and they were just kind of following Artemis's lead, you know. So.
But I could not see myself surviving a plane crash and having 3 people with me when I go off to places. Even if I was the leader, I wouldn't fucking leave their names out every time I told the fucking story.
Yeah.
Well, there might have been a sniper.
Survivors of a fucking plane crash. Come on.
There might have been a sniper in the woods that shot Artemis. So you never know, man. You never know. I mean, we can't like say that Artemis is wrong because you know, you really never know the truth.
But see, there's the other part where I was always on the because I had never heard Craig. I'd seen Gene talk about it before right before the plane crash, the whole thing with Ronnie. I'd seen many things with him more, so I was already in the Gene head of Ronnie was passed out, he was sleeping, and then but Artemis kept saying, you know, the whole thing with Artemis saying coming back at the plane, and then when Craig said that he did come back, and I was like, whoa, wait, so is Gene wrong? What? So is Artemis right on that one? So he tells the truth on that one, but he leaves out shit on the other one. So I'm like, what the? It's fucking. I think that's one of the reasons why there are so many people that are so fucking into it, kind of like Manson stuff, and like you were talking about the Jimmy Slicker or whatever.
Yeah.
When you talk about that, because I'm a Manson guy, and I know a bunch of people that do stuff talking about Manson and the actual overall story and how the one that was portrayed to us is complete bullshit. Almost all of it's bullshit except for some names and some dates here and there. But everything that we've been taught about that guy he wasn't the monster that everybody
I know. I've been watching some interviews. Actually, the Beach Boys stole one of his songs, and it pissed him off.
Not only did they steal that song and not pay him for it, but he's also on some other songs. Yeah, Dennis changed the lyrics on him and changed the title. But also, and that song is horrible. Dennis's version is awful. But if you hear the original, it's fucking awesome. Because everybody loved him. A lot of musicians fucking loved Manson. That whole story about he was some hack that people thought was a bother and get out of here. That's the complete opposite. He recorded with the Wrecking Crew. Dennis and his brother, the big writer of the Beach Boys, the crazy one.
Brian Wilson.
Yeah,
Brian. They set him up. And had him record with the fucking Wrecking Crew with Terry Melcher because he was so good. But they buried those tapes after what happened. And what happened was not Manson. He didn't tell them to kill. That was all Tex Watson and Linda Kasabian.
Yeah.
Which turns out that I went to high school with a relative of Linda's.
And Glenn Campbell, I think, was in the Wrecking Crew, and he toured with the Beach Boys. So it's like a whole thing.
It's totally, and he recorded other songs with Brian and with the guys and did a bunch of stuff. But he was tough to get into the studio because he was more of a he wasn't a studio type person. That's not because he learned all this stuff in prison, so he was never in a real studio. But what the hell was I going to say? Shit. Oh, but with that whole thing with all these different Manson groups, there's the same kind of stuff that you were described with that Jimmy Slicker with
Yeah.
Craig and all these,
Yeah, you have
Skynyrd
to have a
freaks.
nemesis.
There's a whole
Yeah.
thing with it. There's a whole, it reminded me of all the Manson people, all that crazy shit that I've learned shit from the last few years.
Well, see, what happens is you get, when you start talking about things, and then, you have these guys like Jimmy Slicker, he, like Craig
I wasn't going to
mentioned-
say his name, by the way, but you had
Oh,
already
it's
said
okay, because that's not his real name. But yeah, Craig told a story and how Ricky Medlock came before Bob Burns. You want to tell your version of that, Craig?
Yeah.
Well, I'm just trying to what do you call I'm lost for the word.
Mediator.
No, Ricky. People are saying Ricky wasn't part of the original band. And I'm going, well, Ricky, Bob and Gary and Ronnie, did form the original Leonard Skinner. They were the first three, and then they brought in Alan, and then Larry jumps.
Leon. Jumps from first.
Yeah, and then something happened where Bob quit. And so they brought in Ricky, and Ricky was the drummer for a while, and then Bob came back, and then they had two drummers for a while. So you could say that since Bob quit and Ricky was there, and then Ricky was
This is
there.
all before Pronounced.
Well, it was before Pronounced.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So it's the beginning.
You could argue the fact that since Bob quit and Ricky came in, that he was with the original band longer than Bob, because Bob had quit. That point could be argued, but according to this other character, that I'm just full of shit, that I'm totally disrespecting Bob because I'm saying that Ricky was first. Well, I know the story, but what I'm saying is, that Bob was there, but then Bob quit, and then Ricky was the drummer for a while, and then Bob came back, and they had two drummers. So, but
well, it could be like the airplane story. Everybody's got their own version.
Yeah.
But Jimmy Slicker doesn't count because he's just a fan site guy.
I'm certified. I'm just trying to certify the fact that Ricky was one of the originals, is what I'm trying to, say.
Yeah, and Wayne, this Slicker guy, we'll get him out of the way because this guy keeps popping up on our radar, and he used to be a really cool guy. I'm not even sure if it's really the same guy or not, because the guy that is the real guy, I won't mention his name, but Jimmy Slicker is his stage name for his fan site. And this guy used to be a really cool guy, and then all of a sudden he got involved with some jackass that hates Craig, and then all of a sudden now he hates Craig and he hates me. But the guy used to be cool. But here we are raising money for plane crash survivors, and this guy's doing everything he can to make us look bad. Now, who's the bad guy, right? You're raising money for plane crash survivors.
Well, what's funny is the guy puts me down like I'm nothing, and one of the band's wives kind of stole my videos and told me they were going to make a movie, and I was going to make a bunch of money, and they gave me a rubber contract. And then after the movie came out and it was all out, this guy started using clips out of Freebird the movie to do documentaries. And God, I don't know how many documentaries he's made, but just about every one of his documentaries has got my film. know. So
and he brags about how many people he has in his fan site, and he gets rid of as many people that we have as a total every day, and so
I saw that post.
Yeah, so the guy,
he thinks he's made himself famous using my material and the material from other people, I mean, and he talks about the Stoned Roadie Show's only got 1,700 subscribers, and he's got, I don't know, 5,000, but we've only been I had a podcast for a little over a year, and he's been, I don't know how many years he's been going at it, but yeah,
calm down, Slicker, calm down.
yeah, but they got this. I wonder. Now I know where the bad stuff was coming out. Which one of these fans that? Which one was it? The Leonard Skynyrd family thing or whatever?
No, it was.
That's where the bad publicity was coming from for the Rockin' for a Reason, when people were getting death threats that were a part of this Leonard Skynyrd family. So I don't know what it is, fan site that people were involved in that. Then they got caught on camera, and then they started getting death threats. I think, and these are the characters that put on 3 benefits for 3 different people. And one time there was one for Jimmy Van Zant for his kidney thing. They put on a benefit, and somehow all the money came up missing. And I think they blamed somebody for doing that. And then they put up on another benefit, and then lo and behold, all the money come up missing, and they blamed somebody else for that. And then
a trailer got stolen.
And then here a month ago or some, they did a benefit for Ronnie's cousin that just passed away, and they were supposed to, give the money to his daughter or whatever, and and from what I heard, she didn't get nothing, and then I heard that Ronnie's nephew, little Ronnie, had some songs that he had published, and somehow they finagled one of his songs and stole it from her and sold it to somebody, and didn't even mention her name or give her credit for it or anything. So
we're back to the Beach Boys.
So
now you're involved, Wayne. We've already had our threat, me and Craig, so it's time for you. Now you're involved. So you're going to be getting your threat.
So yeah,
Bring it on, mofo. Bring it on.
But these are the same people that were involved with Facebook when Chad got involved with Facebook. My son Chad, and he got on there, and they had these stories they were telling about Leonard Skynyrd, and Chad was going, "That's not the way that happened. That's not true." And they threw Chad off the sites, and then Chad coerced me to join Facebook so I could get on there. And I got on there, and I said, "That's not the way that happened. That's not true." And they threw me off these Skynyrd sites, We're
only talking about speaking
it's
for the whips.
It's all a big joke. And then this character posts this post that I've been ducking him for. And the guy lives in Australia. He says, I got a score. Anybody knows where this Craig Reed's at? I got a score to settle with him, and he's been ducking me. I'm not ducking.
Well, your podcast
let's set up a venue.
Shoulder most of the
I'll tell you what, Big Mouth. You say you can whip my ass. Let's set up a venue, and let's make it a pay-per-view. And yeah. I'll do bare knuckles with you for.
I'll do the play-by-play with Griff.
Three 3-minute rounds, bare knuckles, because I ain't got more than 3-minute rounds in it. When I hit you, I want you to feel it. I don't want it padded with no gloves. So we got to do bare knuckle.
Yeah, he might want to have a go with one of the guests.
Oh, that's what I was going to say for the whips.
But I don't know how old. I think this guy's a whole bunch younger than me. I mean, I'm 73. I haven't been in a fight for quite a few years. I did some jujitsu classes about 10 years ago. It's the closest I've been to a fight in about 10 years. So yeah, that would be interesting. But I'm willing. Yeah, let's do a pay-per-view. Fly your ass over here from Australia. And we'll meet up in the Jacksonville Coliseum and have a pay-per-view. You wanna make this public and announce it. I'm making it public and announcing it now, you chicken shit son of a bitch. Let's get it on.
Oh, this is one of the greatest swap casts ever.
I'm not ducking from you, you coward that
Doug Stanhope is going to be so proud.
That threatens women's lives for going to a rockin' for a reason, you chicken shit piece of poop.
And for the whips, for the Waiting Interest podcast pack, I've mentioned it before, but Craig, what's beautiful about this is Craig is the one of the crew in What's Your Name in the song. He's the one of the crew that got him booted out of the bar, and now you know why.
That was 50 years ago. I mean,
but
Craig,
awesome
what people don't understand is the whole "What's Your Name."
I kind of retired.
That's Craig too. The "What's Your Name" because Ronnie would tell Craig to go get the girls out of the audience and pick some pretty ones and bring them back, and Craig would ask their name and he would forget it, and Ronnie would say, "Who do we have here, Craig?" And he go, "What's your name, little girl?" And that's where Ronnie got that from.
No, let's do it. Let's do 3 3-minute rounds, bare knuckles.
He's right back into the fight.
And I don't care who. And Jim, I guess it's Jimmy Slicker.
Yeah, it's Jimmy Slicker.
Well, he's in Australia. How can I be ducking him? I mean, you got to score to settle with you. I don't even know the guy.
You guys can meet
He's just
halfway, somewhere.
These liberals, man, they're something else. They make up a story and they think everybody's just gonna believe it because they say it's true. And I heard all those people over there on that Leonard Skinner, whatever that fan site is. I heard all a bunch of liberals, So
yeah. But he lost a lot of subscribers, though, because the other day when I posted, there was a bunch of them said, "Oh, I unfriended him a long time ago."
He says he deletes 100. He says he deletes 100 a day, so it don't matter.
Well, he's probably half of them don't even interact on his page, So let's make Jimmy Slicker a flicker. You guys bail out of that. Damn, that guy's a big liar, and he starts a bunch of shit for no reason. We're raising money for plane crash survivors, and he's stirring shit. That's all he's doing. So,
well, we're helping right now. What we're doing here with this Swapcast of the Waiting Interest podcast and Stoned Roadie. What we're doing is he's going to lose more than 1,000 a day. People are going to be jumping ship and coming over to the Stoned Roadie Show and the Waiting Interest podcast. Yeah, waiting with a Y, by the way. And I wanted to show. So see, let's move on from that. But
yeah, he don't do podcasts, so he just steals a video and makes documentaries or something. I don't even know what the character does.
I don't either, but
all I know is we're doing right now. I go to watch something that involves. I go to watch some kind of documentary that involves Skynyrd, and lo and behold, there's my video they're using, and I say this is copywritten stuff. And then there's at least 100 or two. I don't even know. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, hey, Griff. By the way, speaking of that, is there any way? Because I emailed you both the thumbnail that I'll be using. Is there any way to for you to pull that up and put it on the screen
right now? No. Craig could do it, but he'd have to go into the into his on his.
Well, he's got the same. He's got the same pictures on his green.
Yeah, can you pull it up, Craig, on the dashboard?
So what I was going to say is one of the fun things is the whip is I talk a lot about synchronicities, and one of the things that I realized while one of my favorite bands is Junkyard, and Whip 119 actually had the drummer Pat Mozingo from Junkyard on the podcast. We almost 3 hours, and it's only chapter 1 where he's coming back.
I saw some of that. Yeah.
He's so fucking cool. Somewhere. Nice. So to me, I describe people because Junkyard never blew up or anything. They had some, they had a little bit of peak bit with Axl wearing this t-shirt in a picture, and Slash wearing the other t-shirt that I have years ago in a shop, but because they gave them to him. But I describe Junkyard as think if if AC/DC and Lynyrd Skynyrd had a baby and Guns N' Roses was their babysitter. That's how I describe them to people who've never heard Junkyard, right? And then come to find out watching you that fucking AC/DC wanted Leon, and then come to realize, oh yeah, Al Cooper played on Junkyard's first fucking album.
Yes. Leon, I guess he knew the guys in AC/DC pretty well.
Sorry for sorry for so much fucking.
Well, Craig's sister don't like it, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry. Which one is it? Because I know you got a bunch.
Yeah,
right?
his sister likes to watch the podcast. I don't know. She likes Kathy Godsey. She likes
Kathy's
Kathy.
awesome.
She told me she told me yesterday she watched the podcast. She goes, now I like Griff too. I don't want him to think I don't like him.
Well, I could understand. What's her name, Craig?
Gail, yeah. Oh, and she's I said she was 90. Yeah, she's only 89.
Oh, jeez, you are so offensive. So anyway, getting back to what I was just saying. So Junkyard's one of my favorite bands because they never blew up and got bloated, or whatever. But and to me also, I started out in talk radio. I worked with many some I already told you Bennington was one of them. Some of the greatest radio people, greatest radio people ever. I cut my teeth on, and through that, one of them was Suds Coleman from the Rick and Suds show. And at first, I wanted to have my own show, blah blah blah. But then as it kept going and working with all these people in the '90s, I was like, no, you know what? I just want to be a young, dirty Suds, because Suds was very clean. He was hilarious and he dropped bombs. He rarely spoke. And when he did, even if he just went, you'd fucking howl because it was perfect. He didn't have to say words. And I always wanted to be a young, dirty Suds. That's all I would say. And because, like I said, he was more clean, like a more 50s, 60s mentality, but with a dirty mind, but without saying things that were too great, without being stern. Or Stern-esque. And then a few years later, I end up doing a show with my future ex-wife, and we won an award for best fucking weekend non-music program, mainly because of me being a young, dirty Suds. So then, this will make sense when I say that with Junkyard, David Roach, the lead singer and lyricist, if you go through Junkyard's music, you'll be like, he's like a young, dirty Ronnie.
Oh, okay.
It's fucking awesome.
Yeah.
If you got to listen to some of the rants that he has and some of the songs, and it's like, yeah, that's like that kid Ronnie Van Zant babysat that motherfucking kid, David Roach. It's because his rants are so great, and like the song Blues, which they spell Blooze. I ain't talking about no lightweight penny, any weekend war. I'm talking about drinking. Talking about when you got $2 left, you got nothing to eat, you just gotta keep drinking. Talking about when you get home at 3, but you don't make it till 4 because you can't find the door. Not just that, that's a little cheaper. It's a little more punk-esque because they have a punk vibe as well with their Motorhead vibe. But if you go through his other lyrics, Hands Off, so many other tunes, you'll be like, that's a young, dirty Ronnie Van Zant. That's one of the reasons why. And they have they have a twang. And Bad Religion, right? The band Bad Religion.
Mm-hmm.
Brian Baker, who was him and Chris Gates were the guitar players, the original Junkyard. Baker had when Junkyard broke up because of grunge in the early 90s, mid 90s, Baker went on and joined he's been with Bad Religion since 1994, but he still writes new music with the guys from Junkyard. Brian Baker has been with Bad Religion. He's been the one with they both, Brett Gurwitz, they all have glasses, all the guitar players, I guess. Everybody but Bentley, the bass player. But Baker is Brian Baker is so fucking fun to watch. He's like the punk, he's like a punk Alan Collins.
What do you think of that Oliver Anthony guy, that song that he just came out, that's #1 on iTunes? What are you thinking about
because of how I am politically? I knew it was probably really good, but I put it off. I might have been the last person to finally fucking listen to it, even though I knew. But I have all these things where even when good shit like that pops, you got to stay back and hold on a second. Don't comment right away because things will change, the story will change or whatever. A la
Right.
Michael Orr, the Michael Orr story.
Yeah, yeah.
I used to bowl. The kid that played him in the movie, Quentin Aaron, he used to bowl in my bowling league when I lived in LA. I was in a league at Studio City at Pins, and I taught him how to bowl a little bit. I
Oh,
told him how to
shit.
bowl better because dude, you could be in the bathroom because Quentin is so big. He would loft the fucking ball. It would land over the arrows. If you were in the bathroom, you'd be taking a piss and you'd hear this big thump and you'd go, up, Aaron's bowling.
It throws it halfway down the lane
Oh
before it
my
even hits it.
God. And it was fucking loud. Anyway.
Yeah, well, Craig thinks that
the
Oliver
point,
Anthony is like Ronnie Van Zant, but I think it's like a Hank Williams Jr. is what
I would say if they both, I would say if those two and a few others were at an orgy and Roseanne Barr was the mom.
That's a good perspective.
There's a whole bunch of sperm in that dude. He was when I finally listened to it, I went, because I was scrolling. I was purposely, everybody on Twitter was sharing that somebody put, I think it was Matt Orfala put together a reaction video with all these people reacting to the song, black, white,
I know,
Chinese, all this. And I just kept scrolling past it without hitting the audio because I just like, nah, I'm gonna wait because it might be something, whatever. And I don't know. I think it was 2 days ago where I finally went, all right, I'm gonna listen to this. And I went, this motherfucker rocks.
Yeah.
And wait, and did you do an interview with him?
No, we're supposed to have yeah, we're trying to line that up. I don't know, Craig.
Don't you know him somehow? Somehow there's a connection.
Well,
one of my Facebook friends is a real good friend of his guitar player, and he was trying to get both of them on, and he just said that Oliver, he must get 200 calls a day, people trying to get him to sign a contract or come
shit.
on a TV show or whatever.
I can only imagine what his life is like right now.
Get Joey in with us, the guitar player, and he's a really good guitar player.
Oh, excellent! Yeah, excellent. But
but I thought, what you said about Ronnie, I compared him to Ronnie, but it's kind of like, Ronnie was 45 years ago. So, this Oliver, he sings about things that didn't exist when Ronnie was around, but
well, you know what? Ain't things going on. Listen to that song. I posted that a couple of months ago going, see, this is one of the songs I try to use for people to go, just listen to these lyrics, too much money on the moon, too many lives across the ocean. I don't think that they just sit up there getting high.
Oh yeah.
He was fucking calling that shit a long time ago. It's the same shit. Ronnie knew it. Things going on you don't know.
Right, yeah. Yeah.
If you're 5'3" and 300 pounds and sit around eating chocolate rounds.
That's why I say he had to be watching the Stoned Roadie podcast, because I think he got that from Craig. It's just too coincidental that he mentions fat people in the song, and Craig, that's one of Craig's
speaking of
things.
Oh yeah, and with that, the fasting thing that Craig talks about a lot. I've in 2015 I was still in LA, and I was doing a play, and right before I got the gig, and before we started rehearsing, I'd already started it because I'm into psychedelics and stuff, and people think I do mushrooms all the time. I only do them every year and a half.
I did some
like
2
Craig.
days ago. I did some a couple of days ago, but I didn't get a good dose. I just got enough to do a little buzz.
Oh, just a little microdose.
Yeah, I didn't.
Dude, but wait. I want to get to that. You've actually done mushrooms at the fucking Hell House. I want to get to that, but before that though, just to finish the story, I was, in my homework of psychedelic stuff, I read about how with one of the many good things about fasting is at a certain point you'll fucking naturally trip.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Right. Yeah. And
that's why Craig does it so well.
Now I only
when I got the
so I don't.
I know. Same here. I try to only eat one meal a day, and that's one of the reasons I have this girlish figure. I've never gotten fat. Because I try not, and it also helps with morning time, excavating. Makes it, smooth as you get older. It's easier, the less you eat, the easier it is to shit, is what I'm trying to say, folks. If you didn't get the code, if you didn't get the Goonie code, but what the hell was I trying to say? Where was I? Fasting, or eating. So I was like, I think I was 3 days in when I started to play, and I mentioned it to the director, it was Craig's age, and he was like, "Oh yeah, dude." And yeah, I did it. The longest I went, I think he said 34 days. And I was like, "Oh shit." So he was into it, and he knew I wasn't just being some LA douchebag. He understood, because he was older, and he was mature, and he got a lot of the stuff I was talking about. Besides some of my castmates, some of them thought, oh, this fucking douchebag actor, what's he doing? I know a couple of them thought that, but they didn't, because they didn't get it. And I know I can understand why it would look that way, but no, I was trying something, and I made it 13 and a half days. And the lady who was playing my mom in the play basically forced fucking soup down my throat.
Man, you could have gone on Naked and Afraid, man, for 13 days. You might have won,
And it was cool. Basically, all I had a coffee in the morning, and it was just water. I barely ever put lemon in my water or anything. But I never got to the trip part. But
well, that's why Craig does so well, because he can get to the trip part, and then that's what his prize is.
The Stoned Roadie, in a world where laughter was king.
Hey, that sounds pretty good, didn't it, Craig?
The Stoned Roadie.
But one time, I had this gummy somebody gave me, and I was at my house. Craig came and stayed with me, right? And so I said, "Craig, I got these gummies here," and I opened my hand, and he had them out of my hand and in his mouth and down before I could even see what color they were. I was like, "Damn, Craig." And he's like, "What? Were you giving them to me?" And I'm like, "Well, I guess."
That's something that guy would have fucking done.
Yeah, I was saving them for when I retired and I could get a buzz, but that's okay. Craig needed it more than me.
So so back to now. Let me get back to the Doors thing. We got Junkyard. I don't want to speed through things. I know we're gonna do a fucking chapter 2. We're gonna, because we've had such a fucking great time already, and everybody's gonna love this. But one of the things I would have pulled up if we were doing the StreamYard thing, I would have pulled up the logo for the Lords, which is I'm in a Doors tribute band. I'm the vocalist. I'm not a singer. That's offensive.
Oh,
that
yeah?
would be offensive to singers.
Anything on YouTube?
Yeah, there's a couple of clips on the Whip YouTube page and other pages. Yeah, there's like a 45-second clip from one of the rehearsals. We haven't done a show yet. We were supposed to do a show next month, but our guitarist realized he's got something where we can't do it. That would have been our first show. But it's called The Lords, and some people, it's going to be fun to me to find out who understands the Lords. It's done in that logo, and then in the corner in the bottom it says a tribute to the music of the Doors. And it's going to be fun to find out it's like an Easter egg, Marvel Easter egg is like, Lords, what's that about? Because a lot of people don't understand that Jim had a book of poetry called Lords and the New Creatures.
You cannot petition the Lord with prayer.
And what year was it that he died?
71, a month before I was born.
Yeah,
his soul traveled across the ocean for a few weeks, and then from Paris to Maine, and then you want to hear the real death of Jim Morrison, instead of that heart attack bullshit?
Yeah, what's the story on? I know it's got to be different.
Real simple. Just think it's almost exactly like Uma Thurman in Pulp Fiction. It was China White. China White back then, he hated heroin. That's one of the things that he and Pam would fight about because she was a bit of a junkie. He didn't like it. And when they were broken up, one of the guys she would hang with he was called the Count. A lot of people don't know about the Count. He was Keith Richards' personal dealer and would stay in Keith's mansion when the Stones were on tour. He had the stuff called it wasn't just him. I believe he also sold Janice the stuff that killed her. It was China White, I believe. But basically it was like with John Travolta in the beginning of Pulp Fiction with Eric Stoltz, and he said this stuff is white. It's not usually it's brown. This stuff is white. It's killer. Blah blah blah. You know that whole thing. And then obviously later on, Uma thinks it's fucking cocaine, and she does a big line and ODs. That's basically what happened to Morrison. He was hammered, thought that the fucking China White was blow. He did a line, and the Count was in Paris at the same time. And that's who that he's not part of the story, but the real part of the story is the Count, and some friends told it later that were there later after the next day that Pam called the Count because they didn't have Narcan at the time. So she was small and already fucked up herself. He was in the living room or whatever when he did that, basically like Uma Thurman started fucking, and the Count came over, pulled him into the fucking tub. They tried to revive him. Didn't work. The Count bolted. And then Pam told that fucking story, but told the real story to some friends who then since have told that story, the real story, like I just told it. So
yeah, that sounds
I
probably.
did that. That's like the shortest I've ever done.
Well, they said he died from alcohol.
No,
Isn't that what they said?
Well, he was hammered.
Was their story. Yeah,
he was hammered, and he was so hammered that he thought that China White was cocaine. So he did a really strong line of heroin thinking it was blow, and that's why he OD'd.
Yeah.
And she was in the
China
other
White,
room.
you only need about a match head.
Yeah. That shit was strong, dude. It's basically like the fentanyl of the day back then.
Yeah.
Basically, if it was today, he would have died of fentanyl. Anyway, sorry.
Well, you don't want to take a gummy from Craig either, because he gave me a gummy, and I did the whole thing where I did a corner of it, and I was like, let me see what's going on here, what's doing with this thing, right? And so I took the corner, and I waited. It seemed like 30 minutes. I think I watched something on TV, and I was like, and Chad told me when Craig handed me that gummy, he said, draw across bones and skull on there, because he said it's going to kill you. He said, do not do a whole half. Right. And I saw Craig take a whole one. So I figured, well, it can't kill me. And that's the last thing Craig told me. It won't kill you. Nope. Right. Well, by the time I kept whittling away at that gummy and I got down to the half, right, and then I went and laid down to go to bed, and that's when it hit me. And all I could do is just lay there and say, just breathe, just breathe. Yeah. And then when I was able to crawl to the bathroom and splash some water on my face out of the toilet, then I knew I was going to be all right. And but I kept saying to myself, Craig said I wouldn't die.
I ate 3 of those things the day
I saw you eat 3 of them. And then you went on stage.
Oh yeah, there's video of that. Oh boy.
And he was driving too.
Shit.
On about 2 of them through that rainstorm, right, Craig?
Yeah.
I opened the garage up, and Chad Reed and Lisa, his wife, they looked like they were both white as a ghost when they got out of that car. And Tanner was like, I thought he was driving good, but they were.
Oh, dude. You got to stop there. Your grandson is named Tanner. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The whip that I just released today, Whip 120, I go over it, but I also go over it in Whip 18, where in Whip 18, Waning Interest Podcast 118. Did I say 18? 118. Uno ocho. I had been meaning to tell a story, because I tell stories, like I said at the beginning of the little thing. It's like a diary or a book. And I told one of my I've been meaning to for like the last, because some of my podcasts, some of the whips most of them are just me, but I have guests as well, here and there. So when it's me, I just, I tell stories like the Diary of the Book thing, but also with guests. But, anyway, I've been meaning to tell one of my Tanner Boyle stories where back in Little League, my team, I was on the A's, and our uniforms looked almost exactly like the Bad News Bears. And I played second base and shortstop, and I had a little bit of an attitude. And I threw a few fits, kind of like Tanner on the field. And one of the stories I told on Whip 118, one of my favorite things to do was steal bases. I fucking loved stealing. Because it was back in the heyday of Ricky Henderson, and Ricky Henderson was on the A's and I was on the A's. So it was all this whole thing. It was all weird. It was synchronicity type back before I knew what those fucking things were back then. I said back twice. Sorry. Anyway, I steal second in this one game, and I go right under the kid's legs. He was a lefty shortstop covering second, which was one of the weirdest things, but that's Little League. I slid completely under his legs. He hadn't even got the ball yet, nor tagged me, and I was called out. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What? And I fucking, what was I? 11, 12?
Bunch of liberals did that.
I mean, I fucking pulled my helmet off and kicked it across the field. What are you talking about? You fucking, I was fucking screaming. And I got kicked out of the game. So I tell that story on a Friday night, Saturday morning when I record Whip 118, and I'm not paying attention to my local stuff. I just moved back to my town a couple of years ago. I was in LA before for almost 20 years, and then Nashville before that, and Florida for that. But I grew up here, and so my little, come to find out, I wake up on Sunday afternoon or whatever it was, when I didn't wake up in the afternoon, but I think it was in the afternoon when I found out that my Little League right here, my Grey New Gloucester, they won the fucking state, and they're going to go to the preliminary round before the Little League World Series. Like, how synchronicities.
Yeah,
holy shit.
cool.
What? Wasn't following it, and I didn't find out until after I told that story, the day after I told the story. So then I bring it back up in Whip 120 that I just released today, because I recorded that instead of, I was supposed to record with Pat from Junkyard, and then we got the Eastern Pacific thing all screwed up, which I was very fucking clear in a couple of fucking emails. But anyway, so I was all ready to go, kind of like we were earlier, and I went, oh, fuck it, we're not doing it. I recorded a solo one, and I saved it, and then I recorded with Pat and released that one first because of the numbers. So I recorded 120 before 119. So in 120, there's more of the Little League thing. Anyway, it gets back to Tanner, all the synchronicities between Skynyrd, me, Doors, Craig. He's like me. Craig is basically and that's the other thing where I connect with you guys because all my Skynyrd shit on YouTube, you guys just came up and recommends, because I've got so much Skynyrd shit that I've watched. Because I watch at least once a month. I watch one of the fucking 76 or 77 live shows. And plus I have a Skynyrd YouTube list, playlist. But when the whole thing with Craig, everybody came to Craig saying, oh, you should write a book. No, I'll just do this podcast. I'm like, that's what I do. I've been doing that since 2019. I do the same thing. So I'm like a young, dirty Craig.
Craig says that he's never read a book, so why would he write one?
See all these synchronicities I pull out of my ass?
Yeah.
So anyway, all this all that.
Well, we have a lot of that going on. We have a lot of that going on with the plane crash survivors, and any time that, we don't even plan anything. It just kind of like everything's set up to happen without our knowledge. We just kind of go with the flow, and then the whole thing where we met Zach Lane, and then Zach is
oh man, that fucking kid is fun to watch. Holy
and then
shit.
He recorded with Derek Hess, that little demo thing we did down there, and Seda singing. Did you see that? They did Getaway and the Rossington Collins, and then
I wear the Rossington. Did I say that? Anyway,
yeah. So it's kind of like going crazy, and then of course there's a lot of like Buddy Crump, and Fortune Child. Those guys are you know, they're tied in with the plane crash survivors, you know, and stuff like that too. So it's all crazy how everything comes together, you know. It's just,
Isn't it?
it's weird.
Oh, and that's another thing. When it comes to all the Guns N' Roses Skynyrd synchronicities. Bob Burns, we talked about. Don't go yawning, Craig. Go ahead and smoke another bowl. You just smoke some sativa. The whole thing with the drummer thing. Bob Burns, who is he's the OG Skynyrd drummer. You could say that Steven Adler is not the OG because there was I can't remember who the drummer was before they did the solidified GNR. But first two albums, there's Steven Adler. Same thing with Skynyrd, first two albums with Bob. He gets booted for, being crazy, drug addict, drugs, whatever, fucking fame going to your head, all a big fucking mix of shit. That's what happens when nobody knows who you are. And then all of a sudden everybody knows who you are. Especially fucking 50 years ago, Jesus Christ, there was less people. So even more knew who you were. And Steven Adler, that whole thing. So that's another synchronicity I wanted to point out because that's all I talk about is synchronicities and that kind of shit. And, they both had the Hell House. Oh, psychedelics. Craig, you when messaging about doing this in the weeks that we've been doing that, one of the things you said was you saw something about me talking about mushrooms or whatever. And you want to talk about psychedelics. And there's another thing. You got fucking Hell House. Both Guns N' Roses had a Hell House too. It was just on the Sunset Strip off of Hollywood Boulevard or Sunset Strip behind the Guitar Center. But, totally different. But they called it the Hell House where they rehearsed and kind of lived. But where the Hell House, where Skynyrd wrote most of the fucking classic tunes that most people know, everything basically before Give Me Back My Bullets, right? You fucking actually tripped at the fucking Hell House.
Yeah, but that wasn't the real hard ones, it was just
They were the fresh picked,
Oh, so you didn't let them dry enough. Oh, so do you guys want to know my psychedelic thing, my hardcore psychedelic thing?
No, I didn't really get the real leave your body experience type thing. It was just more or less of a good buzz, but
nowadays, Craig,
but at least you did mushrooms at the Hell House. That's fucking awesome. That's kind of like you were at you were there when they turned the lights on at fucking CBGB.
Well, who met you first, Kathy Godsey or Griff? Because I was talking to Kathy Godsey today, and I was telling her I was going to go.
Yeah, I've seen Wayne's podcast, and then I don't know if I emailed you or you emailed me, but we wanted to get him on the podcast, and then either go on his or he, and then we kept messing around with that. Yeah, and then we kept messing around with that Rocking for a Reason, and we had some guests that we wanted to get on, but so finally we got Wayne on, and we can collaborate, synchronicity, like you said, who knows?
That's why it's a Swapcast.
But anyways, I've back and forth between Griff and Kathy Godsey. We've been talking about getting together with you, and then I was watching one of your podcasts, and you were talking to a guy about doing heavy doses of mushrooms, and it cracked me up. I goes, well, maybe we could do a podcast to have something in common to talk about.
There you go.
About mushrooms.
There you go.
Well, maybe you guys can do mushrooms on a podcast, and we'll see how you act.
That's disrespecting the mushroom, and we'll have bad trips. No, fuck that. No way. I'd prefer to fly out to Ohio and do it with Craig personally.
Do you see a big difference?
What you're talking about? I think that was with Daniel Knopf, who is the creator. Remember the show Carnival on HBO?
Not really.
Carnival back. It's 20 years old. It was back in time. It was like took place in the early 1900s, and it was a weird carnival with freaks or whatever. He created that show. It was on HBO years ago. He was also a writer on Blacklist. many other fucking shows. He's written for a lot of stuff. Anyway, that's who I was talking to, because we knew each other from a film thing I did years ago. And that's funny about that, kind of like what I was just saying, what Griff was just saying in a different way, is we talked about mushy and my heroic dose and some other stuff. Well, a week later, he fucking texts me on a Sunday morning and says, "Call me when you get up." So I'm like, "Oh shit, what did I? Oh, does he want me to take the podcast down? Something will go wrong or whatever? What happened? What I do wrong or whatever?" I call him and he goes, "So, I had a bunch of friends and family watch the podcast, and one of my friends brought me over a bag of mushrooms. You want to come to Florida and trip with me?"
How do they do those mushrooms?
Are you serious?
Do they have like a dosage, like in milligrams, like they do?
I usually do it.
Yes.
I usually do a gram. I usually do a gram, but
that's not enough.
Do you see a big difference between the buttons and the stems? The buttons are a lot more stronger to me.
It depends on you want to look for things where it looks like it's moldy, where there's a lot of blue in it. You want to look for that, and those things that to me, as what I've in my learnings and my experience, those have given me the most visuals. It's not hallucinations, it's visuals. And visuals are fucking fun. Dude, I learned in my heroic dose, my first heroic dose, I learned what the Smurfs and the Oompa Loompas and the Munchkins really are, because those are all psychedelic stories. It got to a point after my yawning, after I was like, "Oh my God, wow." After you go through the come up in the Wizard of Oz, it's a psychedelic story, obviously. People say, "Oh yeah, but they don't really know when they go." Yeah, I know. They don't really know until you really have done it. The tornado that she's in, that represents the come up. When you start to feel it and it feels like your brain's getting separated when it's really coming back together. And you just have to say, "Oh, that's right. That's right. It's the mushy hitting. It's the mushy hitting. It's only 10 minutes of this, 5-10 minutes of this. I'm going to be good." Just keep that in mind, because that's where people go off. That's where they have supposedly bad trips, because their come up freaks them out. When if you just at 10 minutes, you just ride it. It's like that first hill on a fucking roller coaster. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. And then everything's fine. It's the same fucking thing. Well, when you, anyway, so at one point after that, and then I do a whole bunch of yawning for like 5-10 minutes, and it feels like I'm almost going to get lockjaw and tears, that, as Bill Hicks recalled them, tears of forgiveness, when he was tripping. Those come out. So I get prepared now with a roll of paper towels, soft ones, Bounty sometimes. Not that this is an ad. Damn. But I get ready for that. You learn as you do it. I also get ready. When I come down, I want fried chicken. Fried chicken is the best when you fucking come off your peak. Trust me on that. Trust me, people.
Well, hey, how about this, Wayne? What about if you go on that intermittent fasting and you
I do that beforehand.
Yeah,
if I'm going to trip, if I know I'm going to trip, trip on Saturday,
double high.
The more you don't eat beforehand. Oh, I got more for this. The more you don't eat beforehand, the more you fast beforehand, the harder it hits. So if I know now I'm going to trip on Saturday, I don't have to even try. I will not eat anything after fucking Thursday night. And I also won't drink anything but water, because your piss when you're tripping is holy water. If you catch the first couple of a little bit of the first couple of peas after you've eaten mushrooms, catch that and set it aside.
Oh yeah.
If you've had nothing, that's what those fountains with men or boys peeing, that's what that represents.
So soak a rolling paper in it, right? And then
maybe you could do that too, I guess. I don't know. But I tried it and it works, because what happened, you set it aside, only a shot, maybe a shot. And it tastes like stale soda. That's all it is. And that's one reason that you only drink water for the first couple of days before that. So you make sure you're clear, so it's as clean as possible. Just drink water if you know you're going to trip on Saturday, don't drink anything but water from Wednesday on, and your piss will be clear as fucking bell. But this will have some psilocybin in it. You set it aside, and after you come down, when you feel like you're coming off your peak, fucking boom, you'll be back up for another 30 minutes. No shit. That's why it's called holy water. And that chalice in the fucking church,
See, look at Craig.
that's really a
the gears are
mushroom.
turning in
Because
Craig's head.
if you let a psychedelic mushroom grow all the way out into a chalice, it goes from a fucking bulb and then to a table, and then it'll grow into a chalice. If it's psychedelic and you put water in that for a bit and let it sit, that's the chalice in the church. The fucking that bread they put on, that circle bread on your tongue, that's a cap. The holy water is that what in that chalice, the real chalice in Indiana Jones in the Last Crusade, it's the fucking one that looked like a mushroom. Because Jesus was a mushroom.
Well, have you ever
born of a virgin? Born of a virgin. How do
experimented?
you explain the virgin birth? Oh, because it was spores.
How about the peyote? Have you ever messed with any of that?
No, I haven't done peyote yet.
Yeah, I've heard that's a bad
It
trip.
It can be. No, it's at first it's kind of like ayahuasca, basically, what I've known, what I've been told. But let me finish the mushroom thing. My first heroic dose, the little people thing. So after I stopped doing my first batch of yawning and the tears of forgiveness, and it got rid of depression, I can notice for the next 3 months, because I had like a dark cloud follow me for a year and a half before I did that shit. And the next 3 months were like, I felt like I was fucking 12 again. Felt like I was Tanner Boyle again, just saying. So into my peak, all of a sudden, I'm just sitting there. My buddy Tim and we're both just kind of in the apartment, just like, wow. Before we opened the door and went out, and like it was Willy Wonka, like the Chocolate Factory, before when he sings the Imagination song after he opens the door. Anyway, at one point, I hear giggling on my shoulder, and I'm like, "What the fuck, dude? What the fuck? What the fuck?" And it was and kind of like when you get a twitch in your eye. And it stops and it won't stop, but when you look in the mirror, it stops. As soon as I turn my head to look and see what the fuck is on my shoulder, it stops. And then all of a sudden it's over here. The fuck? And that's how I reacted. I wasn't scared. I'm like, that's the Smurfs, the little people, all that shit. They're around, but the leprechaun, you're never gonna fucking find them.
So
That's
so
the point.
in a
But
session,
they're there when you're tripping, and they're helpers.
in
Anyway,
a
go
trip
ahead.
session. So let's help me understand. So what do? You get home from work and it's like 5 o'clock, and how much time do you have to allot to be on this trip?
Well, the evening, and preferably I'm not working the next day.
Okay.
But there's not much of a crash. There's not. That's the beauty of
Yeah.
mushrooms. Also, is you don't get the crash that you do from acid.
Yeah.
Because acid can make you feel like you just you did a bunch of blow and
Because
drank a case of
there's
beer.
a lot of fungus stuff in mushrooms, sometimes you get some really weird stuff to come out of you, though.
Yeah, you had a stomach thing going on there for a while, didn't you?
Oh
Craig?
man, I did some mushrooms at one time, and boy, it's got a lot of it's
Sometimes
got
they give you the
fungicide
shits.
stuff in it, and
Yeah, you got to make sure you get it from a good place.
It'll break some shit loose in you.
Yeah, you had some.
Yeah, there's that famous meme. There's that famous meme, isn't there? I've seen it a few times where something about that's something about it's a cartoon and the guy's taking a shit and he's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe these mushrooms made me. It's so cool, but they made me shit. Gave me the shits, or whatever." And then the next shot, he doesn't realize he's actually in the middle of a crowd and everybody's watching him. I can't remember what the meme is, but I think people will know what I'm talking about. But I've never the last couple of times I did it as tea. I crushed it up and
I
did
do
it as
tea.
as
Yeah,
tea.
that's what I do.
And it comes on faster, but it makes you pee a couple extra times because that liquid it goes through you pretty quick because you didn't chew them up. But I remember at my buddy Phil's place, I did it with Phil, and he didn't. I got enough for basically both of us to do about 5 grams apiece. Well, he didn't he didn't want, because I can't do less than that. Otherwise, it's like somebody's tapping me on the shoulder constantly and like, stop it. It's bugging, nothing's happening. And he didn't want to do all of his because he was afraid, and he didn't know it as well as me. Anyway, so he only did half of his. So I basically did around 7.5 myself anyway, with I just took the rest of his. And the coolest, everything at his place, because he's an artist. and he's got all kinds of stuff that's a lot of it's black and white, but then there's like a piece of color somehow in the middle or off to the right or off to the side or somewhere. So it's kind of weird. So I'm surrounded in that, and the lights are low. And it was really cool, but all my visuals were black and white, like it was all fucking 50s TV. But then I go into his bathroom, I turn the light on, and all of a sudden, all the different colors in his bathroom were like, whoa, hitting me like I just walked into a carnival. Like, holy shit. It was fucking wild, man.
Yeah, we used to do them when I was a kid. We would go out into the woods, and we would get a pasture out there with all the cow shit in it, and then we'd take some cans of sterno, and we'd bake our tea. We cook our tea up in the, on top of the sterno, and then we would just trip out in the woods, or we'd take some with us to the drive-in movie and do them. But I didn't ever get a bad trip or a really heavy trip, but so Craig, how long does a trip last?
Oh God, I don't know. I do them about 7, 8 o'clock, and I end up in bed.
You're good by midnight, yeah. 7, 8 o'clock, 7:30.
And I wake up.
So the next morning you wake up and you're fine, right?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's been so long since we did it, and we probably weren't even making it right. We tried eating them, and I remember getting a weird, different kind of a buzz, but I really can't remember what it was like. But yeah, nowadays, I mean, the way they are with the medical marijuana, and then everything's metered and measured, and you can get you a bag of mushrooms. I don't know, where does one get a mushroom?
Well, I get them. That's the thing. I get them from different places, and it's weird. If I could get them from the same place, I'd know what dose to do. But I kind of like doing a gram, and like a lot of times I'll do a gram and I'll really get a good one. And sometimes you do it and it's not so great, but if I could get them to where it was consistent, I'd do, a couple, 2 or 3 grams, but I don't know.
I know there for a while you were doing them like for about 3 months.
Oh yeah, I did them. I did them for. I got a bunch, so they were the same kind, so I knew what they were. So yeah, I did them for like 6 weeks or something like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it was
until they were gone.
Yeah, it was. But I didn't.
But you were just microdosing
with them. Yeah.
Right.
What?
But you were just microdosing.
Yeah. That was just.
You got to do the heroic. You got to see. That's kind of what I did. I would, even though I've been a Bill Hicks fan.
That guy said this the microdose just to do a gram,
Yeah, which is good. Which is good. It's got its definitely has,
and because it's got all the fungus shit in it, it really cleans you out. It really does a lot.
Absolutely. But and the microdosing is got its good parts, but if you want to have the spiritual experience, and because that's the most spiritual experience I've ever had was on psychedelics, on to the ones that I've also done ibogaine, but I wasn't able to do the flood dose of ibogaine. That's a different story. But when it comes to the mushroom thing, I was that way to where I never did enough. That was the thing. I'd done them a bunch of times, and I knew all this stuff about mushrooms, and I was already saying that Jesus was a mushroom because that's because you can't explain it. You can't explain the whole. That's what the mushroom is what answered all the questions. Christmas is about mushrooms. All that stuff that we do is all about mushrooms at Christmas. The tree and all that stuff, the red and white fucking gifts wrapped underneath the tree and all that stuff. It just goes on and on. But anyway, the point being that when it was brought up to me, oh, here's another synchronicity I just thought of when it comes to this. The guy, my friend Jeff, he passed a few years ago. Jeff Oliver Madley Clark. I worked with him at Premier Radio Networks in Los Angeles. He was the head. He supervised the network operations center. Looked like a roadie, and he was for a little bit. Did a lot of stuff. He's the one that introduced me to the whole thing about Jesus was a mushroom. And when he first said it to me, and I wasn't offended, I just had work to do. And I was like, all right, dude, you're talking too much. Get out of my studio. I got shit to do. And then the second time he mentioned that Jesus mushroom stuff, and he talked about the virgin birth. How does that explain? I go, yeah, I know. I've been asking that myself. How do you explain that? It's fucking ridiculous. Well, spores don't need seed. And then I started putting it together like, oh yeah. So Jesus was born in a manger in a pile of cow shit.
Oh God.
Eat of my flesh, eat of my body, that whole thing. Mushy or fleshy.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe you should
The
write
Pope,
a book, Wayne.
The Pope dresses like a fucking mushroom. The Vatican has 2 giant mushroom fountains and a pine cone statue, a trinity. A pine cone statue. What's the pine cone represent? From the pine tree, back to Christmas, the pine cone represents the pineal gland, your third eye, which gets squeegeed off, as Bill Hicks would say, by the mushroom.
Oh yeah.
And if you're tripping balls, who do you sound like when you talk? Jesus. Jesus rises every motherfucking day out of dead shit. Rose from the dead. Where do mushrooms come from? Dead stuff.
Maybe that's why Grace
you know
Slick sung about it. Grace.
That's
Slick,
right. Back to that. That's the whole thing where you reminded me of, because Grace Slick told a story about Jim when they were together, when they were in France, or I think it was in Europe in 68 or whatever. And when you were talking about Craig just gobbling up all those fucking, when the hand was out with all the shit, that's what Grace talked about with when they were walking through the streets. Morrison was just, people were handing him shit and he was just going donk, donk, donk.
Oh yeah, that's Craig.
And then he passed out. He passed out on stage.
Yeah, I just held my hand open. I had a few gum. It was a rope. It was one of those ropes, is what it was. It was a rope, and Craig just grabbed it and just threw it in his mouth. And I go, Craig, man, I meant to say that was a piece of dog shit. Well, it was good.
It was good, dog poo. Anyway, with the psychedelic stuff, I mean, there you have it. I mean, all the Christmas stuff, dude. A Christmas story, a Christmas Carol. Explain the Christmas Carol to me. Okay, so this rich twat piece of shit doesn't care about anybody. All of a sudden, in one night, has these visions and then wants to give everything away and help everyone. Sounds like fucker was tripping balls.
Yeah, Morrison must have been tripping.
Oh yeah, he tripped a whole bunch. That's where a lot of their
and
Oliver lyrics came from.
Oliver Anthony's probably tripping.
But yeah, definitely. He's out in the woods. Oh yeah, there's a lot of cow shit. So what was I saying though?
Those for some good lyrics.
But where was I with the?
You were back to the Jesus thing.
Yeah, I know, but what exactly was I saying?
I don't know, man. It was pretty far out there. I was getting
I know.
Lost.
Craig laughed. What the hell was I saying? Where was I?
Sorry about that, man.
No, it's okay. It's okay. That's what I do. I'll find it, and it's kind of like my penis at some point. What the fuck was I saying?
We were talking about Grace Slick.
Oh yeah. Well, we had that with the sorry, not trying not to smoke. With the Morrison thing. Oh, the tripping, something about tripping somebody. But you said Morrison, but I was saying something when you brought up back up Morrison. Fuck, what was it? Anyway. Oh, goddamn. Oh, the religious stuff. Oh, that's what it was. Christmas Carol. Scrooge. If you go and you read testimonials of people that have done either peyote or mainly ayahuasca or ibogaine or iboga, those are 3 other natural psychedelics, and I'm talking natural only, because it has to do with different regions, and that's where all the religions come from, are the different regions of whatever psychedelic, natural psychedelic was there. That's why Hindus think cows are holy. Why? Because access to God comes out of their ass and their shit. holy shit.
Okay.
And their
And
gods
they
are
like to take a bath in the cow piss.
and the holy water, you mean? And then
Right.
their gods are all hermaphrodites, mushrooms, spores. We're back to the mushroom. There's no seed. There's no male, female. There's that whole thing. But anyway, but back to shit. Where was I again? Oh, Christmas Carol, ibogaine or iboga. There's two different versions of the ibogaine comes from iboga. They use ibogaine to help get people off opiates, which works really well. But you go into a trip that's very similar. Did you watch Game of Thrones?
Yeah, a little bit.
Remember the part where the whole thing with Bran, the tree of life, that whole thing. Remember when Bran goes back? He's with Max von Sydow, and but he's invisible, kind of like the Ghost
so
of
these
Christmas
people
Past
that are writing all this stuff, they're tripping.
Yeah, and remember when those people were writing these stories, these stories that have lasted, all the long-lasting stories are psychedelic stories. And one of the reasons they've lasted was they were started back then. Those people didn't have a bunch of shit distracting them like TV. So they writers were tripping balls to find out all these fucking weird shit, all these things, and going, whoa, A Christmas Carol, Scrooge, he was tripping on ayahuasca. You basically have that Christmas that you'll have, or ibogaine testimonials, read it about it for people. And they have a moment where they have these moments where they're back in time, standing there invisible, watching something that happened to them when they were between birth and 7 years old, kind of like the Dexter thing, and some kind of trauma, and they see it from a whole different angle. They're able to let go of it. And that's one of the reasons why people come out no longer depressed, and they feel much better about everything and realize that whole thing about we're all one, and they're much better people. That's one of the reasons, because your traumas are dealt with, kind of like how it MAPS, Multidisciplinary Association for Psychedelic Studies. They've been doing this thing for years. Speaking of vets, from whenever we were talking about vets, my dad's a Vietnam vet. PTSD. They've been using MDMA to get rid of PTSD on mainly vets. A lot of other people too, but vets are seriously encouraged to join their studies. They're like the numbers are around 70% or no more PTSD.
Well, I wonder,
and the numbers would be even bigger, because they go through this trial of there's integration where they talk to a therapist for a couple of my old podcast. I had one of the therapists on, and they do this 3 weeks of integration where they talk about stuff, and then they do the session in the office, and then 3 weeks after they talk about what happened, and then they do another one. So they're supposed to be 3. Well, some people have been, I'm good to go after 2 or 3, and then they drop out. So the numbers would be more like 90%. Because they can't use the people that dropped out after 1 or 2 sessions.
I wonder how the first time somebody did a trip, they picked a mushroom out of a cow patty and they said, "Hey, I think I'll eat this."
As Bill Hicks put it, we went from or like the Terence McKenna stoned ape theory or hypothesis, eating stuff and finding stuff. They went from they found these mushrooms and went I think we can go to the moon.
Greg, did you ever do any mushrooms before you met Skynyrd?
No,
No. So the first time you did shrooms was at the Hell House.
Yeah.
That is so fucking
hey,
awesome.
walk us through a day at the Hell House. Walk us through a day at the Hell House with the mushrooms, man. How did it all go down?
With mushroom, I didn't eat them during the day. I just ate them, at nighttime.
So what? Help us understand. So okay, the band got through practicing, and they said, "Craig, you got to stay here."
So tonight. You just got through listening to the bare parts of Railroad Song or Swamp Music, and then they fucking leave, and then you go and chew on some mushy, knowing there's gators fucking 25 feet away.
Yeah. Well, the first time it was Gary Rossington's time to stay out there, and he didn't really want to stay, and I was staying at the 8 Days Inn with Bob and Ed King, And I just said, you know, Gary, God, I'll stay out here. I'm just staying there 8 days in. Ain't no big deal. I'll just hang out here. And he said, no shit, man. Cool. So he went and picked a mushroom and came in and gave it to me and washed it off and gave it to me. And Ronnie handed me a 22 rifle, and that was about it.
Wow.
So garden to play.
So did you eat the mushroom? Is that what you did? You
yeah.
it?
Yeah.
And then you got a good buzz, did you?
Oh God, you know, that was 50 years ago. That was a lot of buzzes ago.
Yeah, it's hard to remember all the buzzes, you know. It's like
that exact buzz. That was a lot of buzzes ago.
Well, Joe Crimp told me they used to keep
Dude,
mushrooms.
that's a fucking when I talk to Pat again from Junkyard, I'm like, that's got to be a fucking Junkyard song. That was a lot of buzzes ago.
That was a lot of buzzes ago.
Well, yeah, I guess when you're the first night out there, when you're on a mushroom trip, though, and you're out in the middle of that damn swamp, because
there's no lights. There's just a little bit of light that you had in there.
Have you ever been there, Wayne? Because it's
no, but I've seen plenty of video, and I know where it was at the time.
No, there's there's lights. It's just, you know,
but there was just lights there, and you saw maybe a little bit of light from the railroad tracks that were up a little bit, but the road that was up, but pretty much it was fucking black.
Once darkness,
no offense, nothing racist here.
Once darkness fell and you're eating mushrooms, you didn't really open the door to look outside.
Yeah, kind of like Willy Wonka, and then you start singing the imagination song.
There was a great big bull out there that didn't really like people too much, and then he never knew where there was a snake. I mean, yeah, it was dark out there. You never knew if there was, you had to really watch where you walked. There's snakes and gators.
Did you guys ever try to grow any weed out there at the Hell House? I know you had to have.
You should have.
I never.
Yeah. I mean, that's a perfect place to grow some
weed.
Fuck
yeah. Especially at that time when there was nothing around, nobody else around.
I was telling Craig, I said, Craig, when I was like 13 years old, you guys were at the top of your fame and practiced out at Hell House. I said, if I'd have rode out there on my motorcycle and pulled up there and beat on the door and said, hey, let's burn a joint, would you guys have burned a joint with me, or would you have kicked me out of there? And he said, oh, if you had a joint, we'd have burned it with you.
Stoner, not that we're doing an ad or anything, but speaking of weed, let's burn a little. On the Stoned Roadie podcast, we do Stoner and Co. weed.
Yeah. But yeah.
So did you ever do any dimension jumping while you were doing the mushrooms? Did you ever think you jumped to a different dimension? I did once.
Yeah, that's back when you were talking about different dimensions. I remember you were in the third dimension and you were trying to get to the fourth.
I didn't know if I was a wild dream or if I actually jumped over to a fifth dimension or whatever. But it was,
absolutely, I think that's part of it. The whatever they say that dimensions
doesn't the pineal gland have something
pineal?
With the,
that's why it's at the Vatican. There's a pine. That's why there's a pine cone statue at the fucking Vatican, along with mushroom fountains. The pine cone, the mushrooms squeegee off, as Bill Hicks said, your pineal gland, so you have access to God or the universe or home, as E.T. called it, phone home. I did a podcast. The movie E.T. I know I've searched the internet. Is anybody else saying what I'm saying about this? The Jesus mushroom thing, that's not mine. That's fucking John Marco Allegro. That's many people were saying the Jesus mushroom thing many years before me. I'm one of the prophets, or not prophets, or whatever you call it. One of the just talker, whatever
but Craig disciples. And I are disciples, though.
I'm a disciple of the Jesus mushroom thing. But anyway, what the fuck was I just saying?
You were the one that the
E.T. thing.
Yeah.
The movie E.T. No, everybody just sees that as a family movie about an extraterrestrial, blah, blah, blah. And it's a long lasting classic. Guess what? It's also just like Wizard of Oz or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. It's a psychedelic story. E.T. I did a whole podcast about it, man. 3 hours or so. Why won't this joint stay lit? Anyway, God damn it. Let me start at this. I'm going to do a really quick summary because we've already gone through some psychedelic stuff before to make sense of some of this stuff. Okay, so when it comes, like Mike Tyson talks about the toad, right? You've heard Mike Tyson, the psychedelics, talk about the toad.
Yeah, and
that's where
Tyson's
DMT.
DMT. He's got a lot of TikToks out there, and he's turned into a philosopher. Have you noticed that?
Yes,
it's making sense.
It's because of the toad. He talks about the toad. What he's talking about is DMT, dimethyltryptamine, which it's in our pineal glands. We're all holding, and it's in our lungs, and supposedly maybe our liver or whatever. Anyway, DMT comes from the toad. Well, it comes from other places. You can get it out of a fucking blade of grass as well. But the main thing that people know, you remember the jokes about licking the back of a toad and tripping?
Yeah.
That's not how it works. You have to scrape their venom, and then you dry it out, and then you smoke it. And you have to take 3 hits, and boom. Like Joe Rogan thought that he killed
Greg, man,
Doug
you need
Stanhope.
to go over to Wayne's house, man. I think you guys would be some good.
Yeah, come to Maine, dude. Dude, I've got plenty of room. I got a big house here.
I mean, he's got it dialed in. I thought Greg was the stoner, man. You're the stoner.
Well, put it this way. Back in the day, 20 years ago, when Joe Rogan and Doug Stanhope did the final season of The Man Show on Comedy Central, Rogan thought he killed Stanhope, giving him DMT. And what happened was Stanhope had an ego death, which is that's what E.T. when E.T. supposedly dies in E.T. and then he comes back and he says E.T. phone home. When he wakes up, he says E.T. phone home. That's what it was. That represents ego death. He was phoning home, and that's what you do when you trip. But to go back before that even happens in the movie, remember we're talking about the toad and we're talking about mushrooms. E.T. looks like a cross between a mushroom and a toad, doesn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess you got
at the beginning of the movie. At the beginning of the movie, you just continually see these close-up shots of Peter Coyote's fucking keys on his belt. That's telling you, oh, this movie is a code. This is a key. That's why I do the Goonies thing, because I'm like, looking for the treasure, looking through the map. What's this? Figuring this shit out. Encyclopedia Brown. I got to add that to my open, by the way. Encyclopedia Brown. I just taught some moms. You don't know who Encyclopedia Brown is? You're reading to your kids. You don't know Encyclopedia Brown books? Get them on that shit. They'll be detectives. Anyway. So as I was, what the hell was I saying? Shit. Where was I? Help me out.
Usually I can keep track of Craig.
I know.
I can't keep track of you, man.
I know.
Your pineal gland is like gone. So
anyway, where the fuck was I? Where was I about?
Well, you were talking about E.T.
Oh, E.T.
Yeah.
So at the beginning of the movie, we see the keys, and there's Spielberg, I guess. He's telling us this is a key. Here we go. And then we see the ETs, and they communicated through their hearts. When you're tripping, you communicate through your heart.
These guys might be in Hollywood, might be communicating from that adrenochrome.
They know it. That's later on. That's when
they're doing shrooms and adrenochrome.
But this is but he's telling you where it's stolen from. So, but I get with you. That's a whole other. I can go off on that conversation for another 4 hours with you, brother. Yeah. I was in Hollywood. I know that's one of the reasons I left. I understand. I've said, whatever. Let's not get in trouble, Waynes. So, so now in the beginning of the movie, still. So then we see E.T. with his fingers in the dirt, basically like, remember he's mushroom toad thing. He's kind of like a spore. He's like dropping fucking spores in the dirt. And all of a sudden a little rabbit, there's a close up of a rabbit that pops out and looks at him going down the rabbit hole, just like in Alice in Wonderland. Rabbit right there. And he's under a pine tree. And then they cut to a shot inside the fucking ship. There's 2 versions of mushrooms. There's 2 different kinds of mushrooms growing inside the ship in the movie.
Yeah, so maybe everything does come down to a mushroom.
So that's I'm going to stop there just from that, and I'm going to jump ahead to the end of the movie. So I already told you about the ego death with E.T. That's what represents E.T. dying. which is just him phoning home. He says it, ET phone home. Now, remember when they fly? Oh, let's go to Christmas. So remember when I said about Christmas is all about mushrooms, the red and white mushroom, the pine tree, the gifts under the tree. It's mushrooms growing under the tree. Well, one of the favorite snacks of the caribou in Siberia that we call reindeer, one of their favorite snacks is mushrooms.
Oh,
now you
really?
now you know why they can fly. At the end of ET, remember when the kids all take off like reindeer?
Yeah.
ET is wrapped in a white blanket, and Elliot's wearing a red hoodie. Red and white.
Well, there's a lot of mushroom pictures in Disney World too.
And at the end, remember what ET says to Elliot? The last thing when he touches him, what does he touch him? I'll be right here.
Oh yeah. Hey, you know what? You are going down a rabbit hole, man. That's
just
pretty deep.
That's just the beginning and the end. There's a whole bunch that I haven't even said from the middle of the movie.
Yeah.
It's
I guess you
nuts.
have to
Everything
be on
is a trip
shrooms to figure it out.
We're in a trip. This is a trip. Here. Let me. Bill Hicks said it the best. His joke about wouldn't you like to see a positive? We always see is negative drug stories on the news. You never see a positive drug story. Wouldn't you just like to see a positive drug story? Today, a young man on acid realized that all matter is merely energy condensed to a slow vibration, that we're all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively. There's no such thing as death. Life is only a dream, and we're the imagination of ourselves. Here's Tom with the weather.
Well, you know who must have been doing mushrooms is George Carlin.
You fucking A right, he did some, but he also did a lot of narcotics.
Because that guy had intuition way back then. He knew what was going on, man.
He was doing some of the tripping in the 60s, and they were in the 60s, by the way, before they outlawed it. Speaking of Manson, that's one of the things they helped outlaw it. Because acid and blah blah blah. It's fucking so stupid. In those years, they were doing great studies and showing already that psychedelics were having an effect on people who were depressed or alcoholics, because there was a lot of alcoholics, because almost fucking more than half the population was an alcoholic in 1940. And come to find out, my friend who has an ibogaine clinic in Mexico, she's on her second one. It's in what is it? It's like, it looks like Bora Bora in fucking Mexico. She has an ibogaine clinic where she treats opiate addicts. She was the one that was the first one to inform me that the whole thing with Bill W. Bill W. got off of alcohol thanks to Timothy Leary and psychedelics.
Well, I guess back in the 40s, they didn't call it alcoholic,
No, I don't think so. But you know what I mean, though. Most people were.
Yeah. It was, you didn't think it was dysfunctional, just like smoking cigarettes wasn't bad for you,
right?
Just like everything else.
Oh, I'm not putting anybody down that were. I'm just saying that's how it was.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. But hey, a lot of that makes sense. I never really, I didn't know where a Christmas tree came from. What the hell? How did a Christmas tree come into, Christmas with the presents underneath and all of that?
And here's more to that, to add to that. So the mushrooms, the red and white mushroom grows under the pine tree. Well, when they would go and collect them to dry them, when they would go collect a bunch of them, what they would do is, as they picked them, they would put them in the trees where the sun was hitting them, so they'd dry out as they picked more. What does that remind you of?
Weed?
Decorating a Christmas tree.
Oh. I guess a mushroom could grow out of a log, right?
Oh, they do that too. Oh, they grow out from everything, a lot of things. But the main the Amanita muscaria, the red and white one that's so famous, but that's not the one that we trip with. We use mainly cubensis, the ones that grow out of cow shit and stuff. But the famous one from the red and white, they grow under pine trees mostly. And then when they would pick them, they would put them in the tree so they would dry out while they picked more, because the lighter they were, the more they could put in a bag and take home. When they got home, they would put them in sacks and set them in front of the fire to dry them out more. What does that remind you of?
The stockings.
Right. And this is Siberia. So they also lived in yurts. So they lived in little dome houses, and they didn't have snow plows back then. So they knew the front door was going to get snowed in. So they had a door in the front and the top. So that's the whole thing with the Santa coming in and bringing the treats to the fucking the group, and the Santas, and over there they wear the red and white and the dots.
Where is the how is it coming out of the cow shit? Is it from the cow eating the grass in the pasture, and then there's
the spores in the grass,
and then it comes out of the shit, huh?
Basically, yeah. And it's something with their stomachs as well, that 2 stomach thing, or something about it. There's something, I don't know exactly. I'm not
how about
Stamets, but
what about a buffalo? Would it grow out of a buffalo chip?
I'm guessing because it also comes out, I'm guessing because I think it grows out of camel shit as well.
Well, morale mushrooms grows out of a certain kind of soil with
the morals. Yeah, they come out of a soil, and then like you got the chicken of the woods grows out of trees.
Yeah, they're around like apples. When you find apple orchards and stuff like that, you'll find morale mushrooms. So
non-psychedelic. And you know about turkey tail mushrooms for ladies with great. If you ever heard about some lady, women with breast cancer, tell them to put the start eating turkey tail mushrooms. Paul Stamets is like he's like the Terrence McKenna of today. I've watched his Rogan from years ago, probably fucking 10, 12 times. They named in the Star Trek Discovery, that show that started 5-6 years ago, whatever, one of the first reboots of Star Trek TV shows, that thing, one of the characters, they named him Paul Stamets. And I didn't watch I only watched like the first 2 episodes, I think, but turned out in the season, it was all about the energy thing had to do with spores. And they named one of the characters Paul Stamets. And the guy and the actor Anthony Rapp that played Dr. Paul Stamets on the show is the guy that said that Kevin Spacey grabbed him. That whole thing that started way back in he was also in the movie Dazed and Confused. He was the kid with the glasses. The whole thing with Kevin Spacey was Me Too and shit.
Yeah, that's Spacey. He just got cleared of everything recently. Yeah.
Anyway,
the liberal judge got him off, I'm sure.
And the funny thing is I'm with you when people say that trash liberals now, and it's funny because I come from being a lefty. I stopped being a lefty. Jesus, I was a lefty up until what was it when what really turned me? Well, the Jesus mushroom stuff in 2005, but then Zeitgeist in 2007 really, and Jeff. The Jeff thing that I never got to, the Jesus mushroom thing. Jeff was there at the studio when Guns N' Roses recorded the stuff that's on Live Like a Suicide, basically their first EP, which didn't do much because it was before Appetite for Destruction. But what they did was they took those some of those songs they recorded in the studio and made them sound live, and they put that on the second half of Lies. Remember GNR Lies that they released after Appetite, where it had Patience on one side was all acoustic.
Oh, yeah, right.
And then the other side sounded live, which it really wasn't. Mama Kin
pretty
was
good,
on there.
actually, very good.
Yeah, it was great. Jeff was there and worked at Pasha Studios when they recorded that stuff. That was Mama Kin, Moved to the City, that stuff. So there's one of the other synchronicities with all this bullshit. Guns N' Roses.
Hey, what was the
Jeff
last
Clark.
thing you did before you started doing this podcast, and what were you doing before you got into the podcast?
When I started the podcast in 2019, I was still doing stand up in LA. I started doing the podcast because I was doing it. Sam, you ever heard of Sam Tripoli? Comedian. Sam's great. You got to look up Sam. Sam's hilarious. He does a lot of conspiracy theory stuff. He's a legend at the Comedy Store in LA. We got to know each other, and we were doing a podcast together in the basement of the Comedy Store called Conspiracies Now. And I was kind of like you to Craig. I was his Hank Kingsley, his Ed McMahon. I did the open, and
That's
now
that's what Craig said.
conspiracies
I am,
now
said
with
McMahon.
Sam Tripoli, blah blah blah, and I did this whole thing, and the whole thing with guests, blah blah blah, and I'm Wayness, or whatever.
So you did stand up?
Yeah, I did a bit of stand up. I'm not a professional. I've never got paid, but I did many shows, and I did a lot of open mics and stuff. But we were doing that Conspiracies Now thing, and which had a lot of comedians on it. And then he's like, why aren't you doing and I had done a podcast before where I think I mentioned earlier where one of them, I interviewed one of the MAPS therapists.
So how long ago was it that you lived in LA?
I left in September of 2019.
Oh, so it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, like almost 4 years.
That's when you were doing that.
I started this in LA. When I started doing the Waning Interest podcast, I was still in LA, and I wanted to keep it because I come from radio. That's my beginnings is radio, 1994. And well, you go back farther than that. My grandfather had a room that had a bunch of radio stuff. He used to talk to people across the world. But I wanted to keep it. It was audio only. And when I came back here, I put this house back together that had been rented out we had rented it out for 33 years. So it was basically destroyed. My mom wasn't the best landlord. Sorry, Ma, but you weren't. But so I put that together, and during that I took a break because I didn't do it so at 79 I stopped, and a bunch of people asked me, a bunch of whips who were like, I call them the Waning Interest Podcast Pack. We're like, what the fuck? What's going on? When are you going to do another podcast? And when they did, some of them were saying, when you do, if you're coming back, you should do YouTube. So I was like, I wanted to keep it radio, audio only, but I came back so it's both. It's on Rumble and it's on YouTube, and whoever fucking else steals it, because some of the people I hear that listen to the audio version, they tell me, oh yeah, I grab it off of Overcast. I'm like, I don't even know what that is. I send it to Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, TuneIn, and a couple.
That's like I was watching this. It was a documentary on YouTube, and this Indian dude was talking about Gary Rossington. And it was all about Gary Rossington's death, and this Indian dude.
By the way,
with a heavy,
I'm wearing the Rossington.
Yeah, and so I'm like, he must have stole that. I think he stole it from somebody, because what does this guy got anything to do with Leonard Skynyrd? He didn't even know anything about what he was talking about. So I think they steal a lot of stuff on YouTube, and then they claim it's theirs. So
you know what I'm sick of? Even though it was pretty cool what we talked about earlier with the dude, the song that's gone viral, and there was that, the reaction videos. That's cool.
Oliver Anthony.
Right. Other than that, the reaction, one of the things that I've despised about YouTube is these people that have created channels that have got way more fucking watchers than me, who's doing really good. I'm doing basically a special a week. And I go off in 90 minutes. You're getting at least 90 minutes. And I'm a funny cunt. I know I'm fucking funny because I know what funny is. But these reaction videos, these people that have these channels just watching other people's shit, just
oh, that kills me. I cannot
Jesus
stand
Christ.
that. Yeah, they
my God.
They have a window over here and they're watching somebody and they're going, that drives me crazy.
Yeah.
It's like a comic doing fucking airline jokes. Like, that's pretty hacky at this point.
Yeah, it's almost like
pathetic, but that's why we stand out. That's one of the cool things. There's a lot of cool truth. Oh, and like that. Oh, to go back to that whole thing with the junkyard thing, and then that whole thing where I've always, like I said, for years, I've been a Junkyard fan since 1989 when their first album came out, and I don't know how many years I've been describing them as, which I had to come up with something back before YouTube, because I couldn't just say back in the day, I couldn't just say, oh, here's something, I only had the cassette or the CD, and CD. So I came up with it, like, to me, they're like fucking, if Skynyrd and AC/DC had a baby and GNR was their babysitter, and it's fucking, and then it's progressed to like, holy shit, I didn't even realize the guy Al Cooper, who played on a song on the first album, was Skynyrd's fucking first producer. It's like, holy shit. And then realizing as years went by and getting more into studying the lyrics, maturing as a person a little, and getting into the lyric stuff. Obviously this motherfucker helped me with getting into lyrics, and then realizing, like, wait, yeah, it's like the whole young dirty suds, that's Ronnie and that's David, and and that whole thing. And then watching you and you go, fucking AC/DC wanted to grab Leon, like, what the fuck? It just it just added another one to my thing, going, holy shit, this is like what I was saying for 20 years. It's like it's you can see more. And of course everybody has the same. Some people are like, oh, Wayne, it's all about your ship. No, I'm saying everybody, we're all Neo. At the end of every podcast I say we're all Neo, aka one. The words, it's like Mr. Mojo Rising, Neo one. We all are. So you're me. We're always actually looking in the mirror. One of the greatest spiritual teachings is just, if you can remember for 10 seconds a day, as hard as it is, for at least 10 seconds straight a day, if you can remember, oh, that's right. Just like in the back of my eye, it's all backwards. This is all backwards. I'm not looking out at Craig and Griff and a version of myself on a screen. I'm actually looking in the mirror at all times. Everything is me.
You remember that, Craig?
Do I remember
Alan Watts?
Can you remember that?
Alan, that's an Alan. I learned that Alan Watts. That's just another way. Jesus said it, or the mushroom said it. Krishnamurti, Eckhart Tolle. It's another fucking. They all saying the same fucking thing. And Alan Watts, when he said that, and Terrence McKenna, many people. The list goes on. But when Alan Watts said that was like the closest thing to, clear it up, make it summarize. Like, oh, yeah, the eyeball. That's right. That makes everybody constantly saying we're all one. Oh, yeah. And then when you're tripping balls, you really realize, yeah, we are all one. That's where ESP comes from. That's where, because you feel like in the heart, you feel like you're communicating. Like if the three of us are in the same room and all three of us do 7 grams of mushrooms, there's going to be many points through the night where we're going to communicate without saying any fucking words.
Oh yeah, that's happened. Yeah.
See,
other people think we're living in a virtual reality these days, huh?
It does seem like some kind of a dream, especially. It's just like Oliver Anthony said, he wants to wake up and it's just not true, but it is. Oh,
that's right.
is.
It's a nightmare.
Right. And,
this could be heaven on earth. If everybody
people that
knew.
Are listening to his song, it's their everything they wanted to say to the people they wanted to say it to, but
it's a
they
summary.
Never could. And that's why everybody likes it.
That's
because
why they
when you
teach
hear it, you go, that's exactly what I think. And I'm glad you wrote that, because now people can hear it, and now everybody's on the same page with the way we think.
And what I would say to my kid, with that being viral, one of the first things I say to my kid is, well, she's 22 now, but I would go, now see, remember back in the day, remember when it seemed like it was annoying and everything, when they wanted you to, when your homework was to write a summary of something, they'd give you a subject and write a summary, and it was like a headache, like, what? Yeah. That's what he did. That's a summary of what everybody's fucking, that's an example. So that's what I would always do.
But
as
he
a
may
parent.
have taken
I would pull
a
those little summaries and songs, but I guarantee that fucker's tripped a couple of times. For sure.
He must have taken some mushrooms, because that song, that thing's really deep.
It's gorgeous.
Rich Men North of Richmond. That's pretty, where'd that come from?
He's got about 8 good songs. There's one called Cobwebs and Cocaine. And
whoa.
Yeah, Cobwebs and Cocaine. And then the other one, if I had $1.
Okay.
And then there's quite a few.
That's why it reminds me of Hank Williams Jr., because it's like way out there, and it's about him, and you know how Hank Williams used to write, all those cool songs, and that's basically what he's doing. He's writing some really cool stuff, We'll just have to get him on here, and we'll ask him how he came up with that
Railroad Song. You just made me think of Railroad Song. What Jimmy and Hank were all about.
What's cool about that Railroad Song, though, is how they use the instruments, to sound like a railroad. Everything it's like the drums and everything is just.
Yeah.
Choo train, and that fucking boogie that it gets into. I mean, you just then and then you think shuffling shoes. Oh, did you like that thing that I sent you guys? I was watching the Rick Beato interview with Kirk Hammett, and he mentions before Cliff Burton, the original bass player of Metallica. Well, not original, but as what's known as the original. There was a dude before him, but he died in the bus crash, after Master of Puppets and Jason Newsted joined Metallica as the new bass player or whatever. But in the Rick Beato, Kirk Hammett interview, it's like, was it like an hour and a half or whatever? I loved it where I'm going along. I think it's an hour and 30 minutes in or something. And Kirk's telling a story about back in the day with Cliff, even though he was a bass player and a virtuoso bass player. He also played guitar, and he'd ask Kirk, hey, these Ed King parts, the Ed King part here in the Skynyrd tune, and all these things, and Kirk's like, yeah, whatever, and he just play it incessantly because he wanted to know the Ed King parts in these fucking Skynyrd tunes from the first 3 albums. Anyway, I thought that was fucking killer, which of course, because I already, I'm into you guys. I'm so into you, Craig. Anyway,
Oh, you sent me
Daddy,
that.
I just call you Daddy. Now,
You
we're
said-
doing a threesome. We're doing a gay threesome right now.
You sent me that clip and bookmarked it, and I watched that part of it. Yeah, and he
Wasn't
was
that cool?
He was talking. Do you know how to play? Yeah, I know how to play that. Well, show me. And he played it for 3 hours.
But you wouldn't. The coolest part is you're not gonna. I didn't expect to hear anything about Skynyrd in an interview with the Metallica guitarist. And that just popped up and it had to do with Cliff, which was even cooler.
Well, Metallica did Tuesday's Gone though, and
yeah.
Well, you found out just how many people loved Skynyrd when Gary died because,
man,
look at all the people that were, was paying respects to him. And
I will say that
having Paul Rogers at your funeral, that's pretty big.
Dude.
Right, it don't get any bigger than that. I mean, maybe Robert Plant and Jimmy Page showing up, maybe.
And then to top that off, I think like a month or it was a few weeks later, whatever that thing that was on TV where they did some kind of special. Who was in the middle? Who was the big part of that? Slash.
Yeah, Slash was there. That's right.
I called it, bitches.
It's almost like it didn't fit with all those liberal people, It's almost like Skynyrd was kind of like it just didn't fit.
But see, those, that's what I was at before. Oh, when I speaking of the liberal thing, that's where we got off at one point where I understand where you're coming from because it used to be where I was that lefty and anybody who leaned a little right. And I just immediately thought they were racist. But I mean, that was a long time ago. But I already did that. Jeff was the one that helped me with the stuff with Jesus Mushroom and then fucking Zeitgeist and all the stuff. And then that's where it really flipped when I learned about the banking. And I learned a little bit more. And then I went, wait, I've already watched the movie Network and they fucking told me this. Oh, it made Network make even more sense. And then to learn about, what happened in 1913 with the Federal Reserve taking over and all the stuff. And it's all been manufactured. Everything's been a fucking lie ever since.
Yeah. And that's why they hate Trump so bad is because
he
Trump
said he's told the truth, but
he was one of them. And then he turned on them.
But he still is one of them because he was going to fucking talking about doing the fucking vaccines too. And he gave money to Israel and whatever.
Yeah, he
still does their thing. He's controlled opposition like Bernie was.
Yeah, but the only thing that he does have a track record for, where I'd rather be with him than I am where I'm at now. That's for sure.
Oh, no question. He didn't take us into any more wars. That's no question. He
Craig,
put off that Ukraine
right?
thing. I'm with you.
Craig, you holding up all right?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I just looked and I go, holy crap! I think we've been on here for a couple hours.
That's what I do. I go on for I've got some podcasts that go over 5.
We were talking about doing a part 2 on this. So I don't know.
Chapter 2, yeah. Chapter 2 of the Swapcast. That'd be great. Let's see. Let me see what else did I want to get. I wanted to ask you a question. One thing was the Winterland 75 on YouTube.
I love that
watch.
Winterland. Yeah, that's great. That's where Ronnie without the hat.
And is that you, Craig, that takes Gary's drink during Saturday Night Special?
Probably.
I wrote that in my
could have
notes
been,
fucking
it could
months
have
ago.
been Dean. It was either me or Dean. It's probably 75. It could have been me or Dean. I can't say for sure.
I'm gonna go watch it again now that because I wrote that in my notes long time ago, and I haven't even watched that one in a while.
Was it stage left or was it right behind the amp line? If it was right behind the amp line, it was me.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah, if it was right over his amp, it was me. It could have been Dean.
When somebody handed Gary the beer and he was playing with one hand and it was like,
that was me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, you remember that one, Craig? Where Gary was
now I know which one you mean. That was me, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was maybe it was
I remember
water.
That.
I don't know if it was a beer or what it was, but
yeah. So anybody watching, anybody watching or listening, go to YouTube and just type in Skynyrd Winterland 75 and go to Saturday Night Special, and you'll find it.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was me. I'm pretty sure I remember.
I'm gonna go do it again.
That's the black and white where Ed King was so phenomenal in that Winterland, man. He was like Billy Powell wasn't in it.
That's another thing I wanted to say. So you got Guns N' Roses thing, which this is part of the one I didn't even put in that whip that I did. Fucking Billy Powell and Dizzy Reed. Billy Powell was there and stuff, but he wasn't originally a member. He was a roadie at first and doing that stuff, right?
He was only with the band about a few months before I started. I mean, it was
right. Yeah. But he had done roadie stuff or whatever, but he'd been around the guys for doing stuff, right?
He was one of the original roadies with Kevin Nelson, yeah.
Well, with Guns N' Roses at the Hell House behind Guitar Center, Dizzy was part of another band that had another storage unit there, and they were friends, and I can't remember the name of the fucking band. Can't remember the name of the band, but anyway, that's how he got to know Axl or whatever, and then he joins the band for Use Your Illusion as a keyboard player. So then all of a sudden they go from not having one and now they have one. And Dizzy's been like besides Axl, he's the longest running member. And he wasn't in the OG, but he came in. They started in 85. Dizzy joined the band in 90, I think it was 91. So it was a few years in, but he'd been around. He'd known them for years, kind of like Billy Powell, that thing. And it was through Hell House behind Guitar Center. Guitar. Back to Rosington. Did I tell you I'm wearing the Rosington?
Yeah.
Did you ever go up, Wayne? Did you ever? Oh, by the way, that little fucking woo woo in Needle in the Spoon. Oh my God, that every fucking time to this day, I've been listening to that song I'm 52 years old, and still just yesterday I'm listening to it and fucking when that woo woo when I fucking here's Alan and then fucking woo woo Gary, and I still go I still get a little tingle.
Did you ever go up to San Francisco and to Subway Guitars and Fat Dog and meet Fat Dog?
No, my kid's been to Frisco, but I never went to Frisco.
Yeah,
I never
Subway Guitars. There's a guy named Fat Dog there, and he owns that. And that guy, man, he's got some stories. Anybody that knows Fat Dog at Subway Guitars in San Francisco, you got to check that guy out, man. Just now, call him up.
Is that fat with an F or a PH?
F. They call him Fat Dog because he eats a big hot dog every day. You know.
Okay, and it's in Frisco. I'm starting to get a gay vibe.
No, he actually owns a winery out and
even in San Francisco, the gay capital of California.
But he knows everybody, you know. He knows all these big names.
Back to stand up for a minute.
They used to give them, you know, guitars to record with and stuff like that. But I thought for sure you might have known him. Yeah, because just about everybody knows him. I think he's still around.
I'm gonna look him up after I
look him up.
Look at that Winterland with everybody. Everybody's fucking that Winterland show. All the ones that are on YouTube, the fucking views are gonna go shooting up after this fucking podcast. I'm sorry, Swapcast. In a world where laughter was king.
That's pretty close, man. That's pretty.
You have to see. Oh, there's something I also want you to want the want the roadie fans to look up. I know a bunch of the pack has. You have to look it up. It's the comedian Jerry Seinfeld comedian movie trailer, and then it'll say Seinfeld on the thing when you look it up. You have to watch the trailer for the movie Comedian. It's like 20 years old or whatever. The best part about the trailer is, because I was a voice guy for a long time, one of the best parts of the trailer is it's not about the movie at all. It's just about the guy recording the trailer, and he can't stop saying "in a world." It's Hal Douglas, but they call him Jack in the thing, and it's Tom Papa. Comedian Tom Papa is his face you see in the booth going, no, I think he's the one going, I hate you. Because the guy just can't. It's this movie. It's about a comedian in a world where laughter was king.
What was the name of the guy that did that?
There's no one in a world, Jack. No in a world. In a land before. No, not in a land. Oh. You have to see it. Look it up. It's only a minute something long.
I remember when that guy died and they tried to replace him. You just couldn't get anybody sound.
Well,
like
no,
him.
who I'm talking about is Hal Douglas is in the trailer. Hal Douglas was another guy who did a lot of the trailer stuff. It wasn't just Don. I used to have the same agent as Don LaFontaine. I was with Tischerman when Don went, and I had a chance to go hang out with him at his house, but he's
dead now, right? He's dead.
He died. Yeah. Yes, he passed away. And it shouldn't have happened. He got fucked by the doctors made mistakes.
Well, Craig, you ready to wrap her up, man? You about ready to...
Yeah, we can do that. All righty then.
Look, it's still sunlight in Ohio.
This was supposed to be a waning interest podcast, because we were talking about doing a Swapcast or whatever we were talking about doing, but that
is what we're doing.
But we've been getting kind of off topic on the Stoned Roadie Show, so me and Griff decided we would go off, and instead of doing a Stoned Roadie Show and not talking about Skynyrd like we're supposed to, giving skin information, but we all want to know on the Stoned Roadie Show that we'd go off and do a waning interest podcast, or the whip. But I couldn't get my dang microphone to work on his server, so we had to go over, and I had to host this podcast, and we decided that the Swapcast. Yeah, so this is our first Swapcast of the Stoned Roadie Show, and we got together and had a little collaboration with the Whip.
Is this going to be 93 for us?
The Waning Interest Podcast, the
Don't
Whip.
Up your numbers. Just call it the Swapcast.
It's Swapcast, whatever. I keep messing up because I got brain damage.
It would have been 121 for the Whip, but we're just gonna call it the Swapcast.
Oh, you're not going to categorize it as a numbered podcast?
No, it's too fucking special to have a number.
Yeah, we'll call it the Magic Mushroom Podcast,
dude. I'm good.
So
I learned a lot, man. I'll have to say, I learned a lot. Yeah,
I'm glad to hear it. I like when people say that, and or don't get turned off on the because when it comes to, when I talk to people about it, when it comes, in other conversations, I always I've learned to start with, listen, I'm not saying anything bad about Jesus. I'm all with the Jesus stuff. I'm just saying it wasn't a person, and it all gets explained here, and they're like, holy shit. And just all you have to do, and I've just learned through, I wasn't as good as it. Not that I wasn't as good as it. I wasn't as good as I am now at it, where I can summarize it. Used to be where I was all, as you know, all over the place, even fucking worse. So I'd make it worse. But now I do. It seems easier now with my pulling from all these different classic fucking stories. That's the easiest way to go, because that's what they already know.
Yeah, reference material.
Yeah, reference material, and they all fucking know this stuff, and it's all right in our front of our face, and just keeps being taken from us. And that's part of 1984 bullshit, the keep putting that mask, basically, like as Bill Hicks would say, spray painting fucking black paint on our pineal glands.
Yeah, we just
religion and politics are two subjects that are hard to face these days.
Yeah. But you know what? That motherfucker Oliver, he's basically, I would say he's a big chunk of kindling for the revolution.
Yeah, and I would like to see the songs that Ronnie would write, or even Steve, if they were alive in 4 decades after they did what they did. Yeah,
that's another thing with Guns N' Roses, by the way, real quick. Dude, look at Steve Gaines in those 77, 76 shows and that fucking beard he had, right? And the clothes he was wearing. And then look at Robin Fink with Guns N' Roses in 06, 07. And you're like, he looks, but he's just wearing shades. He looks like he's like Guns N' Roses thing, an added guitarist later on. He reminds me of fucking Steve Gaines. It's just, it's fucking wild, dude.
With that go to hell
synchronicity at work, huh? You got it. Alrighty then. So here we go for another closing of the Stoned Roadie Show and a Swapcast with the Whip, the Waning Interest podcast. And I guess we're all gonna do, and I'm gonna sing to you now. Happy trails to you until we meet again. Happy trails to you. Keep toking until then. Until next time on a Swapcast with the Stoned Roadie Show and the Whip the Waning Interest podcast. We're going to wrap this up and call it a night, and happy trails to you, and see you later, alligator, at the Wild Crocodile. And there we go. We're out of here.
Yeah, you guys are tripping me out.
Toodaloo. There we go. All right. See you. Bye.